Hello, freethinkers. As promised, here we are talking about dismantling the fascism argument. All right, let's just jump right into it. If you're a conservative, you've heard the accusation. You're a fascist. It's the ultimate conversation ender, a political slur designed to shut you down. Now, a lot of people will tell you that fascism just means the forcible enforcement of a political ideology. But let's think about that for a second. By that definition, what isn't fascist? The Soviet Union forcibly enforced its ideology. So did Communist China, Joe Biden's America, and Pol Pot's Cambodia. That definition is so broad it's meaningless. It's a lazy shortcut that avoids any real historical or philosophical understanding. So, what do you do when this lazy shortcut gets thrown at you? You don't get angry, you don't get defensive, you get smart.
Today, I'm going to give you a toolkit, a series of simple questions, 10 or less, that will not only dismantle the accusation, but will also expose the intellectual weakness behind it. This isn't about shouting, it's about thinking. Let's begin.
Well, that's a strong word. So we're on the same page. What is your definition of fascism?
Your first move is always to turn the tables and make them define their terms. They made the accusation, so the burden of proof is on them. Your first move is always to turn the tables and make them define their terms. They made the accusation, so the burden of proof is on them. This is the most important question you can ask. Right away, you've shifted the dynamic. You are calm, reasonable, and ready for a discussion. 9 times out of 10, their definition will be vague, emotional, or non-existent. Follow it up with this.
Are we talking about the specific historical ideology from 1930s Italy, or are you using the word fascist as a general purpose word for political opponent I disagree with?
This forces them to be honest. It frames the conversation. Are we having a serious historical discussion, or are we just trading insults?
Once they give you a definition, or fail to, it's time to introduce facts, framed as questions. Start with the clearest distinction: economics.
Then how do you reconcile the core conservative principle of free market capitalism with the fact that historically fascist regimes practiced a state-controlled, centrally planned economy?
This creates an immediate, unbridgeable gap. You're highlighting that on the fundamental issue of the economy, the two ideologies are polar opposites.
Historically speaking, fascists nationalized healthcare, created massive government welfare programs, and dictated what private companies could produce. From a modern American perspective, do those sound like right-wing policies?
This uses their own political spectrum against them, showing how the historical reality completely short-circuits their modern labels. Now let's go deeper to the philosophical core.
Benito Mussolini, one of the forefathers of fascism himself, said, quote, "Fascism is anti-individualistic," unquote. American conservatism is built on the principle of individual liberty. Aren't those fundamentally opposing ideas?
Using a direct quote is powerful. It's not your opinion, it's the words of the guy who invented the thing.
The main philosopher of fascism, the man who created the concept, is a man named Giovanni Gentile, and he argued that a person only finds true meaning by completely giving up their identity to the state. How is that idea compatible with the conservative idea of protecting the individual from the power of the state?
You're demonstrating a level of knowledge they didn't expect, and you're showing that the entire philosophical foundation is the exact opposite of conservatism.
Most people incorrectly use fascist and Nazi interchangeably. This is where you can really expose the flaw in their argument.
If you believe fascism is inherently racist, how do we explain the fact that there were roughly 10,000 Jewish members in Mussolini's fascist party?
This is a jaw-dropping historical fact that most people have never heard. It completely disrupts the narrative they've been taught.
For several years, fascist Italy was one of the main places where Jews could find refuge after fleeing persecution in Nazi Germany. Doesn't this shocking piece of history suggest that fascism and National Socialism are two rather different things?
You're not defending fascism. You're demanding historical accuracy. You are showing that their understanding is a shallow caricature. Now it's time to take their flawed definition and show them where it leads.
If your main criteria for fascism are nationalism and a strong military, would you consider Winston Churchill's wartime Britain to have been a fascist state?
This is reductio ad absurdum, reduction to the absurd. It uses a universally respected example to show how their definition is useless and illogical. And finally, the question that reframes the entire debate.
Now, isn't the real meaningful dividing line in politics, in this instance at the very least, not left versus right, but rather liberty versus totalitarianism?
With this, you've moved beyond the slur and onto the ground you want to be on. You're no longer defending a label, you're championing a principle.
So there you have it, a simple Socratic toolkit to dismantle a political slur. You start with definitions, introduce contradictory facts, and expose the flaws in their logic, all by asking questions. Getting bogged down in left versus right food fights is a distraction. The true threat isn't where an ideology falls on some made-up line. The true threat is any system, any belief from anywhere that says the state is all-powerful and the individual is nothing. I'll leave you with this thought from the writer Gary Lloyd. When the government's boot is on your throat, whether it is a left boot or a right boot is of no consequence. In the end, the only thing that matters is the boot. By calmly and intelligently defending the principles of liberty, you're doing more than winning an argument. You're reminding everyone what's actually at stake. Thanks for joining me here, free thinkers. Soon we will start a video series that will help apply these ideas to more current debates and political points that always seem to find their way out of the mouths of the left and therefore dismantle those as well. Until then, subscribe here and like this video. Share it with anyone who you think needs to hear these ideas. Thanks again for joining me, and until next time, keep those think machines well oiled and on the ready.